Hello and welcome to Spirit Among Us. I want to ask you a question. How open are you with God? Now, I think sometimes as Christians and even people who aren't Christians, we have this idea of God being so high and mighty, and when we paint that picture in our minds, we often get an idea of him being distant, of him being far away from us, and in some situations almost careless, like he doesn't really care about us. He doesn't really care what's going on in our lives, care what we have to go through. Like he's just a distant God. Yes, he's the ruler, he is the king, but he's not really involved. Now, God paints a very different picture for us, especially Jesus, by him choosing to come down in the first place. By him descending from heaven, he's shown us that he is very intimately involved in our lives, in our existence, and he wants the best for us. He was willing to die for us. Beyond that, though, I want to look to some words that Jesus specifically spoke to us. John chapter 15, verse 15. No longer do I call you servants, for the servant does not know what his master's doing. But I have called you friends, for all that I have heard from my Father I have made known to you. So here Jesus says, no longer do I call you servants, but I call you friends. Such close friends that he was willing to die for us. So taking a look at this, we have to kind of reanalyze how open we are being with God, and how much of this view we have as him being high and lofty and distant. Because first of all, Jesus came down to die for us, but then secondly, he actually calls us his friends now. We are friends of God. Furthermore, when Jesus was teaching us how to pray, he gave us an idea of just how intimate with us God wants to be. Matthew chapter 6, verses 6 through 8. But when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. And when you pray, do not keep on babbling like pagans, for they think they will be heard because of their many words. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask him. Now, I think there are two big things we can take from this. First of all, God is telling us to do our prayers in secret. He tells us to close the door in our room and pray to our Father. You see, God doesn't say, all right, you need to gather 100 people, 1,000 people, 10,000 people together and call on my name and I will answer. No, our God wants one-on-one intimate conversation with us. He doesn't need us to be with other people. Not that fellowship isn't important, because fellowship is huge in this Christian walk. Don't get me wrong. But God at the same time also wants one-on-one with us. The other thing I want to take from this is that God knows our hearts. God knows what we need before we even ask him. And so he tells us, don't waste time lifting up empty phrases, all like eloquent sounding words. You don't need to do that. But God wants what is directly from our hearts. We don't need to waste our time sounding beautiful, sounding eloquent. But God instead wants us to just pour out our heart like we would to a loving friend, like we would to our best friend. You see, Jesus, yes, he is the King. He is the one who reigns forever and ever. He is the holiest of holies. He is perfect, and we are not deserving of even standing in his presence. But at the same time, he's the King that came down from heaven and died for us so that we could have relationship with him. It truly is a divine mystery. But God wants us to be open with him. God wants us to lay our hearts bare before him. We don't need to hide from God because he already knows it all. He already sees it all, and he already loves us exactly as we are. And if our goal is to let God change our hearts, I want to ask this question. If we can't be open with God and we can't share our hearts with him, then how can we expect him to change our hearts? If we can't come to him and be completely open, then how can we expect him to change us? Jesus died for restored relationship. And part of that restored relationship is being intimate, one-on-one friends with God. So take some time to analyze your heart today. Look at any ways that you've been holding back from God. You've been holding on to things, maybe not sharing them in some way. Whatever may be keeping you from God, surrender that to him. Confess that to him. Give it to Jesus because he wants to take it from you. Spend some time being open with God about everything going on in your life. He wants to be your friend. He is the king, but he wants to be your friend. Thank you for watching, and God bless.